It's Friday, everyone. I hope you have had a great week. It has been crazy weather here. We went from almost 70 one day to 20 and some snow. So you never know what you're going to get around here. I hope everyone has had a good week and looking forward to the weekend. As you can see, today is this is how I feel today. This is how it is today. It has been a crazy week, and I did not sleep as well last night because I have a 5-year-old who has a cold and allergies, so she was all over the place and just struggling to breathe, and you know how that is when you have a stopped up head. I'm not sure there's anything more miserable than the stopped up head when you're trying to sleep at night. So that is why I am looking the way I'm looking today. So I'm glad you've all joined me. Just know that I'm a little less sleep deprived than usual. Hopefully she will be on the mend, just a cold. Those are never any fun. So what I want to chat about today is we're going to chat about what's normal in the sleep world. So this is going to drive me a little bit crazy today. So what is more normal and to be expected when we're talking about night wakings? Every age, there's going to be a difference of what is normal and what we can expect when our little ones are going to be waking at night. So the first thing we want to talk about is the 0 to 2 month range. So 0 to 2 month range is obviously the newborn stage. When we have newborns, they are supposed to be waking often, day and night. They need nutrition. They need to be fed often. They have very tiny little stomachs. So when we're talking about 0 to 2, they can be waking anywhere from 2 to 4 hours during the night. That's very normal. One thing you want to make sure that you're chatting with is obviously your pediatrician or your healthcare provider to know what your baby needs, because every baby's going to be different. How often do they need to be feeding? When should they be feeding? And then also if you have a lactation specialist, that is also wonderful because they will actually get to know you and your baby, and it can even help further in what your needs are going to be. So those two things are very important no matter what age we're talking about. I think it's really helpful. I actually, with my third baby, actually reached out and got to work with a lactation specialist, and she was IBCLC. That's like the highest standard of the lactation consultant. So she was actually extremely helpful for a lot of issues. So whether you are formula feeding or breastfeeding, I think those are great investments for you to get. So 0 to 2 months, they can be waking every 2 to 4 hours at night. A lot of people will say once a baby is back to their birth weight, you can go longer stretches and let them sleep when they need, but that's something that you have to ask them specifically. So at that age, you can be 2 to 4 hours, they're going to be waking to eat, and that's normal. Once their body is, day-night confusion is worked out, they are, going to bed in the evening. That's usually the longer stretch you see, is once they go to bed, they might have a longer stretch. And they may only be waking, 2 or 3 times overnight for a feeding at that point. But every, 2 to 4 hours is very normal in that 0 to 2 month range. We have babies who might need 1 feed, and you have babies that might need 3 to 4 feeds. So that's normal in that range. And finding what your baby needs is going to depend on a lot of different factors. And when they can go longer stretches at night will depend on a lot of different factors as well. 3 to 6 months. Usually in the 3 to 6 months, we've got bedtime that is creeped up a little earlier. Newborns usually tend to go to bed later. So they're going to bed, anywhere in that 6 to 8 range is average for 3 to 6 month olds. They are also usually waking 1 to 3 times overnight for a feed. So you might have, especially a baby who is on the smaller side or needs more nutrition overnight, might be waking 3 times versus a baby who is a little ahead of the game or is, nutritionally not needing that many, might only need 1 to 2. But 3 to 6 months, that's where you see that 4 to 6 hour stretch usually that we can get in there. Yes, there are 5 and 6 month old babies who can have 1 feed or no feed overnight, but I want you to know that that is much less rare than society wants you to think. They want you to think that every baby between 4 and 6 months should be sleeping 11, 12 hours at night. And that's just not the case for most babies. They are growing, they're developing. A lot of them might need nutritionally a feed. Next is the 7 to 8 month range. Now, once we get to that range, we definitely see more babies who are sleeping through that 11 to 12 hours without a feed. So once we get there, usually 1 to 2 feedings is max needed nutritionally overnight. It's important to make sure you're tracking what happened, because what's happening and when they're eating at night. What I tend to see happen is called reverse cycling, where a baby will start taking more and more calories overnight, especially once they get in that 6, 7, 8, 9 month range. They start reverse cycling and taking more overnight and less in the day, and that's not what we want at this point. We want babies who are feeding better and more in the day, and they're starting to drop those overnight feedings and are getting into that 1 to 2 feeds overnight is normal for the 7 to 8 month range. Then again, there's a lot more babies that can go without a feed overnight at that age. Once we hit 9 to 10 months, that's where we definitely see the 0 to 1 feedings. For instance, one of my children had health issues, so she at 11 months still needed a feed overnight. That's still where she was getting nutrients. So it's normal at 9 to 10 months where some babies will need a feeding overnight nutritionally. Now, if they're doing more of that, and number one, we either have bad sleep habits in place, we've got sleep props in place, we've got a baby that's unable to settle and they're just looking to get the bottle or nursing to comfort them, and it's interrupting their sleep patterns all night, so we need to check that. And the other thing is, you at that point, 9 to 10 months, if they're taking a lot of overnight feeds, you definitely want to get assessed with your pediatrician or your doctor. And I would, hands down, get a lactation specialist at that point to help you make sure there's no other health issues happening, so you can, address all of that. And make sure everything's in the clear, so then you could start working on making sure, if everything checks out, that they are in that 0 to 1 range of a feed overnight. 11 to 12 months. Once we hit 11 to 12 months, most babies, if you're a healthy growing baby, you're not going to need a feed overnight any longer. There is a small percentage of 11 to 12 month olds that do need a feeding overnight, or if they needed more feedings, again, that's where there may be health issues, health concerns going into place that they need that feeding. And that is where you have to talk to your healthcare provider and stay on track with what your child needs. But outside of that, if everything checks out and they're growing and they're healthy and there's no concerns there, we should definitely by 11 to 12 months not see an overnight feed needed nutritionally anymore. At that point, it usually has become a sleep prop dependency, a issue of them habitually waking. One thing I see a lot of times, and I start to see this especially around the 6 to 7 month range, is where we have dream feeds in place, and the dream feed's no longer doing what it needs to do, meaning the dream feed usually happens to lengthen out and get a long stretch of sleep, and we're not getting that. It actually becomes like an habitual waking and is starting to interfere with the sleep patterns. So be very careful with the dream feeds as they go later. You want to make sure the dream feed, it's in there for a reason. You're doing it to usually get a long stretch of sleep out of them. So if your baby's taking a dream feed at 10 and is up at 12 or 1, that dream feed is not doing what it's meant to do, and it probably can actually be interfering with their sleep. So make sure you watch those type of things. So that is the difference in stages and ages of what is normal for wakings. What do you need to be thinking about if your baby is waking? If you're going outside of any of those recommendations, there can be growth spurts, there can be sickness. Those things obviously are much different, so you don't look at this, that closely if you're going through something like that. But if you are in a normal, everything is a normal week where there's no sickness, there's no growth spurts, there's no changes, and you're going outside, this is where we would need to look to see what we could do to get better sleep in place and how we can make sure to remove any of the unnecessary nutritional feedings. And I call them that because they are there for a reason, depending on the age. They are there to nutritionally give your baby what they need. So we need to make sure if our sleep foundations are set in place, the body will naturally be taking in the feeds they want. For instance, when I work with a 4-month-old who we've set in place sleep foundations, we have the naps in place where we need them. We have them falling asleep on their own for bedtime. We have longer stretches overnight. We've set that into place where they'll naturally wake for a feed. And a lot of times it's only one feed, sometimes 2 feeds that's needed at that 4-month age, because we've done what we needed from the sleep standpoint. So if you aren't seeing in these ranges, then that's something we want to talk about and go further to see how we could get longer stretches, because you have to think if your baby's waking, say you have an 8-month-old who's waking 4 to 5 times, wanting to nurse or wanting to take a bottle, it's interrupting their restorative sleep. They're not getting into the sleep patterns we need them to get into, and then it's affecting how they are, it's essentially affecting how they are living and how they are going about their day-to-day life, because they're not getting that restorative good sleep that they need. So we need to chat about how we can start getting that on the right path. I hope that helps break down the different stages. I would love for you to send me your questions. Today's question and answer day. So if you have questions, be sure and post those for me or send me a DM, and I'll be happy to answer those, because usually if you have that question, somebody else has that question. So I'd love to answer it. One question that I did get was about a 4-year-old who is waking at the same time every night, looking for mom and dad to help them back to sleep. So there was a few things that I said we need to talk about. The 4-year-old's no longer napping. Sometimes the child goes to bed sometimes around 8 or after. So one thing I would look at is moving that bedtime up. We want to shift that bedtime up for a 4-year-old who's not napping any longer. It's very normal for them to be in the bed asleep between 7 and 7:30. If they're waking at the same time and the parent falls asleep, like the child falls asleep with them in the room, they're going to wake looking for you to put them back to sleep. So the next thing we need to assess is at bedtime, start working on you removing yourself from helping them to fall asleep, because they're going to continue to wake during the night and need you to help put them back to sleep. So there's a few things that we have to look at. Also, if you are in my Facebook group, Serenity Sleeper Sleep Squad, I have a whole unit about toddler preschool sleep. It answers a lot of these questions. It tells you what you need to be looking for, assess the situation, how can we correct some of these sleep issues. So I highly recommend joining that group so you can find the unit on that. It's very helpful. So I thought that was a good question, because I know a lot of times we tend to get a lot of questions about the babies or younger toddlers. And sometimes families feel like there's no help or hope for the older toddlers in the preschool age, and that's actually one of my favorite ages to work with. I love it. Number one, probably because I have 2 children that age, a 3 and a 5-year-old. And number 2, I've gone through, with one of my children, I've gone through probably most things that you have. So I love helping families through that journey. So I thought that was a really good question to help today. So that's what's normal in the night waking world. Also, I would highly recommend that you, in my postings this last week and this week, I gave charts that broke down the ages and what's normal for nutritional night wakings and what you can see. So be sure and check those charts out if you don't have them. Oh, somebody said they can't hear me. Hopefully, I don't know. It says that, I hope it's not messed up, but somebody said they couldn't hear me. I hope that is not the whole, I will replay this and make sure that everybody heard me. But for the rest of you, I hope that this was beneficial and helpful for you. I will check to make sure that everybody can hear me. And remember, every Friday is question and answer day. I will come live and chat with you and ask your questions. So, we do have several questions. Number 1, I've heard 5 weeks old equals 5-hour stretch of sleep, 6 weeks old, 6 hours. My 6-week-old is still waking every 2.5 to 3 hours. He's had good weight gain, 7.5 at birth and 10.11 at 1 month. Any suggestions? So that's definitely, we would want to see longer stretches happening. We would definitely, if he's growing and gaining well at 6 weeks old, we should be starting to see some longer stretches than 2.5 hours to 3 hours. There's a lot of things I would have to look at is, what time is he going to bed? How is he falling asleep at bedtime? What are the day naps? What is the structure of the day looking like? Those things all need to be assessed first, so then we can talk about how we can start getting longer stretches of overnight sleep. And that, that's a good rule of thumb for some, but it usually doesn't always work out like that because every baby's totally different. So you can have that as a guide, but don't be stuck on it. But we should for sure be seeing longer stretches at this point. I have twins, 18 months old, not feeding in the night, but waking every night and not settling unless in our bed. Yeah, so we have a lot of things to work on there. One, I would assume, they're waking because they're looking for you to help them back to sleep. We would need to start setting up positive associations in their own room, because they share a room and we can't let them cry it out as they wake each other, and one twin often will sleep through. It's my son who will wake each night. Yeah, so that's one thing where if there's one twin that's sleeping better than the other, we could definitely separate and work on them in separate environments to get, him falling asleep easier at bedtime, getting used to longer stretches of sleep, not needing you to put him back to sleep. So that's very important that we do that. Those are good questions. If you have more questions, feel free to, DM me and ask me those as well, or I'll go live again next week about them, because again, if you have the question, someone else has the question. So those are both good questions. She seems to be waking a lot now throughout the night. I think it's for pacifier. She has reflux and uses it to soothe. I'm feeding her now at 5 a.m., but it seems to be happening earlier and earlier. And she's taking 5 to 5.5 ounces in her 9:30 bottle. Not late enough. I'm a tired mama. I know you are. I know it's exhausting. These are definitely situations where I would love to know more background history, because I get on discovery calls with families, and in those calls I really tackle through, like, what are the main sleep issues? What is your child doing overnight? There can definitely be a pacifier dependency there, looking for you to reinsert that often. The early morning times are the hardest time to get sleep going in the right direction. So definitely those are things that I would like to work through. And at the end of the day, this is a lot of times why I work with families one-on-one, because there's just so much to dig through and make sure we're meeting the sleep goals for your baby and your family, so we can always give helpful information and helpful tips and what I would try. But at the end of the day, it takes a lot to look at and make sure, for that baby that right here you're talking about that takes 5 to 5.5 ounces in a 9:30 bottle, I assume that might be a dream feed. That's where we would definitely want to see that longer stretch of sleep, if she woke at 4 to 5 a.m. and then feed and go on back to sleep. But it sounds like there's a lot of dependencies there that we would need to work on and assess, and see what we can do. 3-month-old won't link sleep cycles during nap time. He wakes after 30 to 40 minutes. At night, he sleeps 6 to 7 hour stretches. What can I do to get him to nap longer? So, naps are developmental. Usually between 4 and 6 months of age is when you will see a baby, their body start to regulate naps more, or be able to work on naps and lengthening them out. So what you want to do is, if he's going down at bedtime well on his own, he's getting a 6 to 7 hour stretch, he wakes for a feed and then goes back to sleep till morning, you want to start working on that first nap of the day in the crib. And you want to start working on crib nap consistency. So that's where you sleep 30 to 40, he sleeps 30 to 40 minutes. And then you want to try and see if you can work on that first nap of him getting back to sleep for that nap. Again, you want to practice it, but that practice is what helps as he's developing, and his body will click naps usually between that 4 to 6 month range. And we have to make sure that the wake windows are right, the sleep environment is right for naps. There's no melatonin set in place for naps. The sleep pressure isn't built up there for naps like they are for for night sleep. So there's a lot of different factors there, but I would really start focusing on that first nap of the day. And you want to make sure that at this age, 3 months old, if he wakes, you might have to assist for the rest of the nap. It's okay if you're holding him or put him in a carrier on you, or he gets a nap in a car, riding, running errands. That's important for you to know. Where do I look at for further information regarding helping my son sleep at night, as I can try and lay him down and soothe things on his in his room, but he will not have it. So one thing, if you're on Instagram, you can find on my profile, you can click, it has, I can't remember if my website is on there. I think it's my website. You can click and find there, or you can shoot me a DM and I will send you a link to my website, which number one has a ton of blog posts. I have a lot of blog posts that are very helpful. Number two, you can, if you're in my Facebook group, Serenity Sleepers Sleep Squad, you can find right there on my profile picture, on my cover photo, to sign up for a 15-minute call. That will also be on my website as well. So my website is www.serenitysleepers.com, and that's where you can get started to reach out to set up a discovery call with me, and also find a ton of information as I have a lot of blog posts on there. Good. Amanda said she fixed it. Okay, that makes me happy to know that it wasn't me and it wasn't my end, so I'm good. Amanda, I talked about halfway through this, I talked about the child, 4-year-old, and falling asleep and some things to work on, so you might want to go back to look at that and listen to that part of it, like what I talked about there. I have a 7-month-old who was sleeping from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. since he has been like 4 months old. Now he wakes up every 2 hours to suckle and to have me hold him. He sleeps during the day every 2 to 4 hours for either 30 minutes or an hour and a half. So 7-month-old, we definitely want to see 3 naps is still normal to have at 7 months old. Anywhere from about 2 hours and 30 minutes to 2 hours and 45 minutes is a normal wake window. I would really watch the wake windows in the day for 7-month-old. I would really get the day sleep structured well. And then at night, it sounds like waking every 2 hours, he has a dependency of just nursing to satisfy him. So we would have to work on that. Making sure that he's not falling asleep at bedtime nursing, or not falling asleep on you at bedtime, like starting there to get sleep in a better place, falling asleep at bedtime. And then we could also address the overnight wakings. We definitely want to see, again, about 2 hours and 45 minutes is about the max wake time. So I would watch the wake times and make sure bedtime is not too late. At 7 months old, it's very normal to see 6:30 to 7:30 bedtimes. So we'd want to make sure that is in place too. And then again, that's why it goes down to the naps. Yes, you are more than welcome, and happy to answer any more questions. Making a quick note. Okay. Do you work one-to-one with families? Yes, that is the biggest thing that I do in working with families. I do one-to-one work. I really enjoy working with families, getting to know you, getting to know your baby or your child. And really, that one-to-one support is what's most helpful for families, because they feel like they have someone. I've been doing this for almost 6 years now. So they feel like they have someone that they are able to connect with, and we work together daily so we can tweak things, we can change things. I give you a customized plan. I give you customized sleep documents just for you and your child and your family. And that is what I do most of the time. I get a lot of families that have implemented, various programs or courses, and they have some great information, and it's great if it works for families. But a lot of times, it's not that one-to-one support. So it's the same thing as if you want to go get a personal trainer. Your personal trainer is going to assess you, assess where you're at, assess your workout goals or your fitness goals just for you, and you have that person that's going to help you. It's the same thing with sleep. So when I work one-to-one with families, I'm able to really dive in and get to know your family and get to know what your baby is going to need to meet those sleep goals. So for sure, I would highly recommend signing up for a discovery call so we can chat further. Again, you can find that link at www.serenitysleepers.com, or feel free to send me a DM as well, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Let's see. I'm going back through. I think I have hit everybody's questions for today. I love that everyone has come on with such great questions. One thing I would say is I've seen several of you have mentioned that your baby has reflux, or you're worried about reflux. One thing I would highly recommend, just so you can make sure everything's cleared, is a lot of times reflux issues can be connected with lip ties, tongue ties, cheek ties. So ties can actually affect reflux babies. I would be sure that there are lactation specialists who specialize in ties. So I would find one that does that specific pediatric dentist will also assess for any ties that could be hindering and causing feed issues or could be causing reflux. It does go hand in hand. And some speech language pathologists specialize in identifying if there are any ties, and they'll send you to the correct, usually a dentist specializes in that, and releasing those ties. So that's something I want to bring up because I've been down that journey. I'm still going down that journey right now with one of my children. So I wanted to bring that up. I've loved answering all of your questions. Again, if you have more questions, please DM me. I'll be happy to answer those. Or if you are in the Facebook group, pop those questions in and I'll be answering them for you more. Thank you guys for joining me today. Again, thank you for, if you missed the first of this, I told you that today has been a crazy day. My hair was sticking up everywhere. I'm like, this is the kind of day it's been. I'm a mom of 3, so if any of you feel me how I feel today, if you've ever felt like that, I love those good vibes because it's just been one of those days. And I was talking about my daughter has a cold and she could not breathe last night. She just could not breathe. You know those times where you can't even get any air in your nose. And I felt so bad for her. So she just had a really rocky night, which means I had a really rocky night. Just trying to get her through this little cold she has and some allergies happening. So thank you for joining me. And I really appreciate you guys showing up and all these great questions. I'll be back again next Friday, be live. So make sure you hop on and join. We'll have a new great topic. And please, I've been getting, some of you have been sending me some helpful information like lives you want me to go on or blog posts that you want me to write about. So please keep sending those because those really do help, because if you have the question, so many other people have that same question. So feel free to keep sending those too. I hope everyone has a great weekend and we will be chatting again very soon.